And now, here to shed more light on the issue is George Melashvili, a president of Europe-Georgia Institute. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation.
So recently we saw another arrest of an Azerbaijani citizen by Russia. And of course, the first incident already caused some diplomatic rift between the countries. And my question would be, are these separate dots on the canvas, or at this point, are there some lines to be drawn between them?
Of course, it's a very big joint picture. So what we have been seeing in the recent few months developing between Moscow and Baku is a rapid deterioration of relations, which began when Russian air defense system took down an Azerbaijani flight. It was December 25, 2024. And then we had this escalation, rhetorical escalation between Azerbaijan and Russia, which was followed by the events in Yekaterinburg when Russian police, OMON, detained Azerbaijani citizens and then allegedly tortured those people. All of it is a part of previously existing Russian strategy of intimidation. For example, in Georgia, we remember very well when in 2006, Russia expelled all ethnically Georgians in their attempt to punish then Georgian government. So Russia has always been trying to, in a way, reiterate and retaliate to the citizens of their neighboring countries the moment political relations between the leaderships in Moscow and, for example, Baku are going in a wrong direction. We've seen it in relation with Moldova, we've seen it in relation with Georgia, we've seen it with Armenia. What we're seeing now, it's the same scenario, the same strategy and tactics utilized by Kremlin to intimidate Baku, but this time against Azerbaijan. So that's the only difference which is happening. Other than this, all of it has previously been seen, not once, not twice. But what is interesting is a geopolitical shift of Azerbaijan trying to distance itself from Russia.
So this brings us to the question whether this intimidation tactic was kind of initiated because of the Azerbaijan's perceived geopolitical shift, or do you think that the war in Ukraine and the desperation to garner more ally or solidify its kind of grip on the Caucasus has led to this rift in the relations?
I think it's both in a way, because these 2 points are interconnected. On one hand, what we see now is Azerbaijan, which is implementing entirely sovereign foreign policy. They do not ask a permission from Kremlin anymore. They believe that they have enough military capacity to defend themselves in a case of any conflict. Also, they believe that they have a very strong, reliable military ally, Republic of Turkey, which is also supporting to their perception and image of self-sovereignty, which they have been doing for a very long time. On the other hand, Azerbaijan has solved its long-lasted, let's call it a problem, in case of Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. So there is no more direct military threat to Azerbaijan from Armenia, vice versa. Pashinyan is doing very actively, and he's very much trying to normalize, stabilize relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and also Armenia and Turkey. So from this perspective, definitely Russian influence in the Caucasus is waning. We definitely see that Pashinyan is trying to detach himself from Russia as much as he can. We're seeing that Baku is doing the same. And the only region, the only country in the Caucasus where Russian influence is unfortunately stable so far is Georgia. So from this perspective, what we are witnessing is a detachment of 2 South Caucasian countries that usually enjoyed closer relations with Russia, and now one of them is trying to get closer to Europe, Armenia, and the second one is trying to detach itself from Russia as much as possible. So I would say it is both.
And do you think there's a world where Russia might tone down the rhetoric, or perhaps choose the carrot over the stick to try to bring Azerbaijan back? Or do you think this is going to escalate into more tensions and eventually some sort of hybrid warfare or a more kind of a political takeover sort of situation?
Russia has always been utilizing hybrid warfare tactics in the South Caucasus, not only in Azerbaijan, but also in Georgia, and also extremely right now in Armenia. However, when it comes to Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan has resources to counter these tactics, and they're pretty good at utilizing same or identical methods themselves. The reason why, for example, Russian cultural houses were closed in Azerbaijan, and now Azerbaijan is moving closer to closing Russian language schools, is exactly because they want to mitigate the possible hybrid threats that can be coming from Russia. When it comes to a carrot, it's more difficult because it requires a step back from Putin, which we know he hates to do. So if there will be a political decision from Russian Federation, then it is possible. But considering how situation is unfolding and also considering the attempt of Russian Federation to demonstrate strength and force right now, I don't think they will be able to take a step back without a big problem in their own propaganda rhetoric. So Russia might try to utilize this tactic, but I don't think it is likely in the nearest future. Maybe in long term they will try to use carrots as well, but not now.
Right, so it does seem like Azerbaijan will still need some powerful allies when it comes to guarantee its own prosperity. So do you think, much like Armenia, it will start looking either towards Europe, United States, China, or other countries to fill that void while Russia is no longer a reliable partner?
Azerbaijan's Western pivot is slightly unlikely at this point of time. Their relations with the West have always been mostly transactional. However, they will enjoy support if it is offered and if the cost is not considered too high for the regime in Azerbaijan itself. On the other hand, in case of Armenia, it is absolutely obvious that they are trying to move closer to the West. And also, when it comes to Azerbaijan, we should not forget that they already have a very powerful ally, Turkey. And Turkey has excessive military capacity. They are able to provide military support if necessary. And there is a military agreement similar to NATO Article 5 between Azerbaijan and Turkey. So Azerbaijan already has a very strong and powerful ally. Again, they might try to deepen ties with the West, but the question is, what price will they have to pay for it?
Right, and also what can they offer to the West as well? And well, I'm also being quite curious looking from the outside what that means for the West, for Ukraine, and for the broader geopolitical implication for Russia to having lost another one of these quite important ally for the country.
Well, when it comes to offerings, Azerbaijan has significant resources when it comes to natural gas and when it comes to other natural resources. Second, Azerbaijan is a gateway to Central Asia, just like the Caucasus in general. So it has very big geopolitical importance when it comes to the European Union and to Europe in general. Also, Azerbaijan is probably the most important parts of the so-called middle corridor, which is supposed to connect China and Europe. And from all these perspectives, it is a very significant geopolitical player with quite significant resources and also significant military capacity. So for the West, Azerbaijan can be a very significant, important, and good ally when it comes to specific foreign policy goals. However, again, we should not be too idealistic. Azerbaijan's foreign policy is immensely transactional, and also the regime in Baku is not a liberal democracy. They will always be trying to keep themselves in power, and from this perspective, of course, it adds some risks to the possible partnerships between the West and Azerbaijan.
So do you think it would be for the West or or Europe's interest to pry Azerbaijan from Russia as a reliable ally, or do you think that the fundamental difference between the political system and, like you mentioned, their views towards democracy will become something that will be hard to navigate?
Well, first of all, it has to be understood that relations with Azerbaijan will be always transactional for the West and for Europe. When it comes to more strategic allies, Azerbaijan can be a significant actor that will contribute to the peace and stability in the South Caucasus in a long-term perspective. However, if it comes to integration or European enlargement, in that case, Georgia and Armenia are offering much more potential, obviously. But again, for Europe, Azerbaijan can play a significant role as a partner when it comes to transactional diplomatic decisions and transactional foreign policy.
All right, thank you so much for your input and insight. I really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on Eastern Express.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Russia has killed at least